All right, welcome into another Auburn Live show. Appreciate everybody joining us. We got a jam-packed show today on this Tuesday morning. The whole team is here. We normally do the modcast on the weekends, but man, when you have such a massive recruiting weekend, it's all hands on deck. So we got Jeffrey Lee and Cole Pinkston with me today. What's up, guys?
How about you, Hope?
That's right.
Staying
All hands
busy,
on
man.
deck for a huge recruiting weekend.
Yeah, it was a big one. All right, so this is gonna be mostly a recruiting show. We wanted to have Jeffrey and Cole on to just fill everybody in on what's going on. But before we get to that, I want to hit on just the high points of what Bryan Harsin had to say during his news conference on Monday. We like to just sort of hit on those high points and keep you up to date on, after a couple of days, I guess a day of film and getting ready for Arkansas, what Bryan Harsin had to say, and then we'll be all recruiting after that. All right, let's jump right in. Look, no surprise. He said Arkansas is a really physical, tough team they got coming up, which is true. Arkansas can really run the football. He mentioned against Georgia that Georgia's a really good team. They knew that. He said there's areas that we have to do to coach better and be better. And we just went back to the team needing to do things at a high level every single day in order to be successful, especially with the teams they're playing. That's kind of Harsin's mantra. Every day, do the things every day, over and over and over, and eventually that'll pay off. I think you're going to hear that all season because I'm not sure it's ever going to get fixed. He talked about the running game. The first two games of the season, Auburn went for 300 yards plus, but every game since then, their rushing number has gone down. They had 182 yards against Penn State. It went down against Georgia State. It went down against LSU. And then went down again, of course, against Georgia. They didn't even hit 50 yards rushing. So Bryan Harsin just said, look, every single week we're trying to establish the run. He said there's not one practice where we're not trying to do that. And so try to get it back on track against Arkansas. Arkansas was decent the first few games of the season, but the last two against Georgia and Ole Miss, Arkansas has allowed nearly 600 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Now, granted, that's Georgia and Ole Miss. It's a good running team and a fantastic offense. Auburn's not either one of those, but certainly they're susceptible to the run. But Bryan Harsin said it's not just Tank, it's everybody. Everybody's got to do a better job. Bigsby hasn't even topped 30 yards in either of the last 2 games. Pretty shocking number for Tank Bigsby. Bryan Harsin was asked about a couple of freshmen, Landon King at tight end and Marquise Robinson at defensive lineman. Both played Saturday. King played early. He got the catches late, but he was in there early. And I thought Bryan Harsin had some interesting things to say about just competition overall. He said at the end of the day, we're still competing, and that never stops. We're competing and trying to get the best guys on the field. He said we want guys competing, and we want them to succeed when they get on the field. Some of these younger guys, if they keep stepping up, we're going to have a chance to improve. And so really, you kind of hit on, you kind of forget you get 6 games into the season, and you think that the depth chart's kind of set at this point. Like, well, you do your work in fall camp, and then the season starts, and that's that. And he's kind of made it a point to say no. I mean, every day. So that's why you see a little bit of Landon King, and you see a little bit of Marquise Robinson and Caleb Johnson. A little bit more time for him against Georgia, and so just made it a point. I think it's important for the players to see that it doesn't matter if you're in week 6, week 8. If you're practicing and you're flashing, they're going to give you opportunities. And so I thought that was interesting. He said Landon King's got tremendous upside. He's a guy that practices really well. And then on Marquise Robinson, he said Marquise Robinson was the freshman defensive lineman. He said he kept showing up at practice, so he earned the right to play. I think he had half a tackle or something like that in the game, but got some playing time. And against Arkansas, I would imagine him and Caleb Johnson will be called on again to play more against a team that's going to run the ball a lot. Bryan Harsin was asked about balance on offense. Auburn's thrown the ball 173 times the last 4 games compared to rushing the ball 133 times. He was asked about how to get more balance, and his answer was pretty simple. He was like, stop losing early. Don't get behind. And that's the problem. I mean, Auburn's gotten behind. You go back, whether it's Penn State, Georgia State, LSU, Georgia, they've gotten behind. And they can't run the ball or try to stay with the run when they keep falling behind by 10 points or 13 or 14 or whatever it is. And so that's a bad recipe for this offense. They're fortunate to have come back and won against LSU and Georgia State, but they can't continue to do it week in and week out. So he just said they got to stop falling behind, and that'll even things out. Lastly, let's see. Talked about the red zone a little bit. Auburn's not doing well in the red zone. 17 trips this year, 9 touchdowns. It's not great. Harsin, that's probably, of anything he's been asked post-game Georgia and Monday press conference, that's one of his more enthusiastic answers, is that has to get better. The lack of touchdowns is a problem, so he emphasized that. So we got to get better there. Arkansas, after the last 2 weeks, is now 76th in red zone defense, allowing 62% touchdowns because Georgia and Ole Miss really carved him up. So there is some success to be found there. And then lastly, we'll talk about the passing defense for Auburn. I asked Coach Harsin, what's going into that? Is it communication? Is it just guys getting beat? Like why does Auburn continue to give up these big plays in the passing game? And he really kind of said it comes down to one-on-one matchups. He said, I think we're communicating well. It just comes down to fundamentals, putting our guys in position and winning your one-on-one battles. And, against Georgia, Badarius Knighton didn't do that. Nehemiah Pritchett didn't do that. McCreary got beat on a touchdown. So it's just those one-on-one routes. It's just you either win them or you don't. And so it's not a communication issue. It's not really kind of what you saw early where guys were wide open. You're thinking, okay, Auburn's defense looks lost. I think now it's just become guys getting beat in some of those plays. And Arkansas is similar to Georgia in that fashion. Arkansas is going to run the ball, and when they do pass, they're going to go big. They're way down in 10+ in kind of those 0 to 10 yard passes. Arkansas is way down. The further you go, 20+, 30+, 40+ yard passes, Arkansas climbs up the national rankings. They're 12th in the country in 40+ yard passes. So that they're going to run, and then they're going to go for a big play passing, just kind of what Georgia did. So Auburn's going to have to get that. Auburn's going to have to get that cleaned up. So that's a quick synopsis of what Bryan Harsin said. We'll get players the rest of the week as Auburn prepares for Arkansas at 11 a.m. on CBS. And I think it's going to be a mentally tough and physically tough game coming off that Georgia game. I think it's going to be an absolute battle for Auburn to try to come out of there with a win. So we'll see.
Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
Before we get into the recruiting, man, I think Cole and I were talking about this a little after the game yesterday, but Ladarius Tennyson, LT, he had such high hope for him a year ago. Kevin Steele loved this guy. He was freshman all SEC and stuff. What has happened to him? Do you have any insight on that? Like, I just have not seen him. Now, I think he's been out there, right?
A little bit, but not lately. I mean, against Georgia, I barely saw him because they went, I think, more run heavy. Then when Smoke got hurt, Kaufman came in. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, from the beginning of the season, he's been out of the mix.
Right. I think I've seen him on special teams.
That's been a strange one to me too. I'll add to your players that played more too, Justin. JJ Pegues was in there a good bit, and
yeah,
I'd be willing to say he was one of the best looking D linemen on the team against Georgia. I mean, he's got the best get off. He's got the most athleticism. We knew that, but I think he started to put it together, and I think you could see him a lot more too. So
yeah, was good. Harsin was asked about him. I didn't include him, but he just kind of said, "Hey, D-line's still Pegues' focus. Play some special teams, but." If he can add something on offense, then they'll try to put him in. Like Georgia, they needed to run the ball. If they think they need him, then but he praised Pegues. He's got high football intelligence. I mean, to be able to play, he's still getting better on the defensive line. He plays special teams. He's got some responsibilities there. And then to be able to go back and pick up things on offense, like, hey, we need you to go in and play, these certain formations or whatever. He really praised his football intelligence and said, he's one of the better players on the team in terms of just being a football player. He's just not developed at any one position. He's a jack of all trades right now, and he needs another year. Give him another year, and let's see what JJ Pegues is as a junior after a year at the defensive line.
If I'm willing to bet on anyone starting to earn more snaps as the season goes on, I'd put it on him right now.
Yeah,
I think he showed that he can, even without some of the polished, ability, he's got as much athleticism as anybody. He can make a difference. So I think he'll start rotating more.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. Big weekend, big week for Auburn, and injury wise, nothing there. I didn't mention that. He didn't mention anything about Owen Papo. but it sounds like Owen Pappoe is kind of the only one that's out there that we need to sort of pay attention to in terms of injuries. Sounds like they're pretty healthy. Honestly, being 6 games into the season, they're in a pretty good position in terms of health. We'll just wait and see if Owen Pappoe can get close to 100% with that ankle and be ready to play. All right, let's dive into recruiting weekend, a massive recruiting weekend for the Auburn football program. Basketball, too. We'll hit on basketball after football. Cole and Jeffrey, I know you guys were all over it, still all over it as things kind of trickle out from the weekend. I thought just for big picture, the staff was just their first chance to say, here's who we are, big atmosphere, this is our program, and show it off. Jeffrey, we'll start with you. What was kind of some big picture impressions on the visitors that showed up, what you're sort of hearing, what you saw, just kind of take people inside a really monster weekend.
It really was. I was absolutely impressed, blown away really at the guys that showed up, not just from the 2022 class, but from the 2023 class, and also at such high priority positions of needs. You saw offensive linemen in the 2022 class. You saw offensive linemen in the 2023 class. You saw a studded group of D linemen from the 23 class. I mean, it was, I think we got them all. It was, James Smith, formerly of Carver and Montgomery, who's now at IMG, one of the best players in the 23 class. Peter Woods, Keldrick Falk. Is that right?
That's
Highland Home. Hunter Osborne, who picked up an offer while at the game. Tamarian Parker was there. I mean, all 5 of these guys are just big-time defensive linemen that Auburn's going to need to win the majority of those battles. I mean, if they can get 3 of those guys next year, it would be a huge, huge haul for the defensive line. We saw the offensive linemen there at the game. We saw E.J. Harris. Of course, Drew Bobo was the biggest news coming out of the weekend, who committed to Auburn on Sunday. Huge get for Auburn right there. Could see a lot of dominoes fall with his commitment. So a lot of momentum. And listen, I know everybody was, defeated literally, but, there was a lot. I mean, there was all positive responses from the recruits that we talked to. And and you go back to what we said last week on our modcast that you wanted – I think all of us agreed. None of us thought Auburn was going to win. We wanted to see Auburn be at least competitive and look decent doing so. You take away those small mistakes. Overall, I mean, Auburn's coaches had that game plan, had those players and that team in a position to win, or at least make it really, really close. You catch 80% of the balls that they dropped. We're talking about a new ball game. I don't think it would have been a difference, but it definitely would have been a new ball game. And I think people, especially the recruits, saw, hey, this wasn't a Gus Malzahn loss to Georgia like it was last year when Auburn was just dominated. So I think a lot of positive coming out in recruiting from that loss.
Yep, I agree with that.
Cole, I know you had a big recruiting insider up. Just kind of take people. This is, and also this is interesting for you. I want people to kind of understand your perspective too, because you're obviously a little bit new into the industry, and this is probably a really eye-opening experience for you. Big game, recruits everywhere, sort of seeing how they react at games. What was kind of your take on the weekend for Auburn, but also just kind of your impressions of how this whole operation works on a big Saturday?
Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening. I mean, that's that was as many recruits as you're going to get at one game. I think, obviously the Iron Bowl is going to be big this year too, but it's going to be hard to get as good of a turnout as they got this weekend. I mean, it was – especially for the 23 class. I mean, there were guys all just sprinkled all throughout the top 300 players. I mean, there were so many that were there. When you think about that, the top 300 players in the country, you got, 40 to 50 of them in one place at your home stadium. That's huge, man. I don't care what the turnout of the game was. You got a chance to work with them. But, I made it a point to ask each guy that we talked to what what did y'all think about the performance on the field? What did you think about your position group? How did they play? Where you would be playing if you were at Auburn. And they said most of them, I don't remember one. I think one guy said, yeah, I don't know, I was not really impressed. But the rest of them were like, and the majority of everybody said, man, they look like they belonged out there. They're like,
Right.
Georgia's the best team in the country. We can see that. Even the parents were the same way. But Auburn looked like they belonged for a half of football and even into the third quarter. So the impression from the game is still good, even though Auburn lost the game. I mean, that was big too. So
the worst thing that could have happened was Auburn getting blown out and not looking like they belonged. Yes. And the recruits walk away from that going, oh, shit, man. I mean, that's what would have happened had that game happened last year, this Saturday, and it didn't happen. It was dang, man, they need some receivers. I mean, that's what Austin Osbury told me. If they had some receivers that could catch the football, who knows what happens. Yeah. So I think, like Cole was saying, man, that was, to me, that was the biggest impression that the recruits walked away from. And I think a lot of fans did too. Like, hey, you look last year and this year, we saw an improvement, big improvement. And that's with the same bodies. So what we saw was an improvement in the box, in the headset, in the game planning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a few guys even pointed that out. They said they thought that the play callers were really good. That's sometimes those are the coaches they talk to, so they probably get a little bit of insight on what the game plan might be and things like that. So they're interested in that when they watch the game. And a lot of these guys know football pretty well, so that was a big deal. And I think too that the crowd made a huge impression on everybody. Nobody walked out and said, that wasn't very impressive. Every single guy said, man, they brought it. I mean, they brought it. They played a factor in the game. The crowd did. They would love to play there, right? A lot of people would love to play under that atmosphere. So I think it was the biggest for the 2023 class, and that's going to be where you get a true look at what Harsin and the staff he's brought together can do. Because they've had time to work on those guys. They don't have the excuse we're playing from behind anymore. You can't say that. I mean, maybe, a couple months behind, but that's not going to make a big difference when they get to, time for them to sign. I want to point this out too. I've said this a bunch in the recruiting insiders, on the boards, whatever. The emphasis in flipping guys right now, that is, they are not worried about commitment status. If you're committed elsewhere, that's just game on, man. They're going to go after you. They don't care. If they think you fit at Auburn, they're recruiting you. They don't care where you're committed. They don't care how strong it is. We'll see if that effort is, wasted. We'll see if that effort works. And I think after talking to some guys and seeing some reactions that effort is about to pay off, and it won't be much longer. So pretty interesting there.
With the with the 2022 class and with COVID and stuff, most of the top guys are committed. They committed. Got them a spot, which is to be expected. I see here 4 guys who I thought in the 2022 class Auburn made the biggest impressions on, not including Drew Bobo, who committed. But Austin Osbury, I mentioned him earlier.
Yes.
4-star cornerback from Baton Rouge University Lab down there. He and his mother came up, and his aunt flew up Saturday morning, and he reminded me of when I talked to Trevon Reed back in 2009, 2010, when the recruitment he went through, and how there was so much pressure for him to go to LSU. He was the number 1 recruit in Louisiana. His head coach, oh gosh, that guy was something else. Anyways, but they were just pushing, and Trevon just felt at home at Auburn. And Austin was telling me that that's kind of how he felt. And he spoke to Trevon, spent a lot of time with him this weekend on his visit. Spoke to I know when we saw him on the sidelines before the game, Trevon was over there with Austin, his parents, or his mom and his aunt. Trevon ended up taking him back to the airport Sunday night. And just really hit it off. And I think that's going to be big. Now, you're talking about players like Alabama, Michigan, Notre Dame, LSU. All these cats want this guy.
Yeah.
But Auburn really, really made some ground up on him, and he was the one. He was the one that said, "Man, they had a couple of receivers. Who knows what happens." But three other guys, and this kind of lines up with what Cole was talking about. Well, we'll talk about Eston Harris first. Drew's teammate there at Auburn High, and to me, Drew and Eston are absolute must-gets for Auburn. And I mean, not only are they really good offensive linemen, but they're local, and there's just so much pressure. Now, I don't know if pressure or not on the staff, but they've got to get these local linemen.
Yeah.
And having Drew commit, him and Eston, Powell Gordon, all three of those guys are really close friends. I think Cole wrote today EJ was going to commit in October 28th.
Correct.
And, that's got to be a good sign to have Drew already committed, Powell already committed, and Eston, I think this was his third, if not fourth game at Auburn this year.
I think they've been to every home game. I don't think they've missed one.
Okay. Drew hasn't. I think Eston went to Florida for the Alabama game, and he missed
yeah, right.
I think Eston's been to 3, Drew's been to 4. But two other guys committed, or two guys committed to other schools. Tell you, Woody, which I didn't see him there, Cole, but he was there. Now I think that he was there.
Got a few pictures of him.
So that's his third game in a row, if I'm not mistaken. He is every time I talk to Tay, he loves Auburn. I still don't know where he fits. Cole might put some. I mean, this guy could. I like him on the defensive line, but what do I know?
Yeah, if you're asking me, if we're asking you, defensive line is where I like him too. If he plays offensive line, it's going to be interior.
Yeah,
but he'll have to add some weight if he does that. He's just a little too light if he's going to play at the guard spot. Center is an option too, but I really think his skill set matches defensive line better to me. I think so.
Me too. I like his mentality over there. I love his defensive film. He's more like a. Go ahead.
He said that he talked to Nick Easton a good bit too. So maybe they're working on that too. I don't know.
And which could explain. I think Auburn's going to. We saw Damari Austin tweet earlier on Monday that another one was coming, a big one's coming. My guess is Tay Woody.
Yeah, very possible.
And if that's the case, and Auburn views him on the defensive line, we saw a new offer go out on Saturday to Inez Cooper, an offensive lineman from Pleasant Grove here in the state. Big dude, 6'6", but I don't think he's as nimble as you really want in a tackle. Is that fair to say, Cole?
Well, here is an interesting development with him. When he came to Auburn in the summer, he was weighing almost 400 pounds. He was like 395, somewhere in that range. No, that's true. That's 100%. I did the same thing. I was like, "Are you sure? You meant 299, right?" He's like, "No. Close to 400." I was like, "Okay."
Damn, he ate Tony Fair.
Yeah, I mean, he's monster. He's the biggest guy out there, I think. But he is. I think I'm wondering if every time they have somebody on campus, if they get a height and weight with these guys, I think they monitor that pretty good. This new staff, but he's down 40 pounds from that initial trip to Auburn, and that was something that the coaching staff was really talking to him about. They've been talking to him for a while. I mean, this is not like a brand new relationship that was built this weekend. This has been going on, and they told him, hey, look, you got to slim down a little bit. That's important if you're going to play here because you got to be able to move, right? And still at 400 pounds or whatever he was moving pretty well. But that was one of the deals. And he came in, he was lighter, and there's the offer right after that. So that lined up pretty well.
Now you say, and I think you said in your Insider Monday that, I don't know if you said it, maybe it was in the post on the corner. He has an offer, but they still, if he was ready to jump on it, they would maybe slow him down a little bit. Like, let's see what happens with some other guys.
And I would say he's probably close. I mean, if they gave him the green light 100%, I think he would not wait very. But I think I don't think he's the only guy that way too. I think there's other guys they're working on that may be ready. We're getting close to the end here, so it wouldn't be surprising if guys were ready. But they're gonna keep making sure everything's they're going to make sure the numbers are right. They get the guys they want. So
another guy that we saw there committed to another school was Robert Woodyard, the linebacker, 4-star backer from Williamson in Mobile, who is committed to Alabama. Been hearing a lot of buzz about him since I think probably the summer, wouldn't you say, Cole?
Yep.
Making some impromptu visits to Auburn.
Actually, Jeffrey, he's been his name's been around for a while. I mean, back when he was just starting his junior year, when Gus Malzahn was still the head man, they were after him too. So
was he committed then?
No, he was not.
Okay,
he was not. He's actually cousins with Lee Hunter on the team, so that was a good tie-in there, and that got the ball rolling. So I mean, he's very familiar with Auburn. Put it that way.
Right. I'm just saying he committed to Alabama, and everybody, including myself, thought it was a done deal because when the state kid commits to Alabama, it's done.
Yes.
But we saw him creep into Big Cat. We saw him allegedly. Was that the first game? But he was definitely there Saturday. He was not only there, but he was there with his Auburn hat on. He was there with Antonio Coleman, his defensive coordinator at Williamson, who we all know was a badass defensive end back during the Muschamp era.
Yes,
and he continued to hear a lot of buzz about him looking not only hard at Auburn, but really, really considering flipping to the point where I think it's inevitable. I think it's not a matter of if, but when with him. I think he's definitely a flip candidate. I think Tay Woody's definitely a flip candidate. And I'm like you, Cole. I think you said sooner than later. And I think both of those guys could be on Auburn's commitment list. And you know what? I got to thinking, we're almost 2 months from signing day. I mean, it's getting here.
Up. Prepped up.
I think we with this new staff and this new season, we've been focused on who's visiting, who's not, and who's showing up and who's visiting where. And then here it is, the middle of October, and we're 2 months from signing day, and we know that most of these guys are going to be signing in December. So, we Auburn's got. I guess we'll continue to count Trey Donaldson as a football commitment. And he will be back this week, by the way. He will be playing football Friday night for the first time as a senior. His hyperextension in his leg is what he told me. His healed, and so he will be playing his first game as a senior Friday night. We'll probably leave him on the football commitment list, but I think.
Yeah, he looked like he was pretty. He looked like he might be ready to roll when he was up there with Bruce when he was shirtless and he was going crazy. So, yeah, I think he's ready to roll.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
All right. So Drew Bobo, have y'all, and I want to know more about him, by the way, because I haven't watched film on him, but I'm seeing 3-star on Drew Bobo, but it's also a super important position for Auburn. So is it a big commitment because Auburn needed a tackle, or is it a big commitment because he's really good regardless? Like,
I think.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Let me give the overview, and then I'll let Cole break it down. I don't think he's a tackle, and I think he could be.
Oh, okay.
I think he could be. I think he's going to be an interior guy. I think he could be an all SEC NFL type center. I think Eston Harris, another guy, inside guy. But Bobo, as far as I was concerned, was he's a versatile lineman. He can play any of the 5 positions. Auburn's got to have guys like that. I love him, man. I watched the senior first half or maybe a couple of games of his senior season. Dude, he's good. I mean, he's good. And so I just thought all around this was the type of guy Auburn had to have. Cole could probably tell you more about how he plays. I've told y'all before, I can only tell you if a guy's pretty good, or really good. But he's versatile, and I thought that's what Auburn could use some.
Yeah, with your categories right there, I'd go ahead and put him in the pretty good category with a chance to be really good. Right, he's not quite there yet. He's got a few things that I just think he needs just maybe a touch more effort when he's playing. But the natural athleticism is there, and I put in the inside the commitment article about him. I made sure that I wanted everyone to see his basketball highlights because to me, you just don't see big guys diving on the floor I mean, he's 300 pounds, y'all. It's not like he's 275. This guy is actually really big. He's in the 300-pound range. He's going to get a little bit bigger than that because he's close to 6'5". The frame is great. He looks the part in person. And he's diving on the floor on the basketball court. He's putting spin moves on dudes and doing the Euro step layup, stuff like that. I mean, that's impressive. I don't care how you look at it. That's impressive every time for a 300-pound guy. So I put some clips of that, and Auburn really fell in love with him. You know, they knew who he was because of Mike Bobo. It was no secret. But they never seen him play on the high level of football like he's at now at Auburn High, which is, that's the highest level of Alabama football, which we all know Alabama football is really competitive. There's a lot of good players that come out of the 7A level, and he's going against guys that are pretty good every week at rushing the passer, some good athletic players. So they wanted to see him on that level, and so far he's done better than expected, and he's actually playing the left tackle spot, which is maybe not what he's going to play early on, but that's what he's doing right now, and he's doing it well. And I made sure I got some of his camp film in there because it didn't matter what camp he visited this summer. He left with an offer from all of them. He went to the Auburn camp, left with an offer. He went to the Georgia camp, left with an offer. And there were some others, too, that maybe already offered him, but he was just one of the best campers, too. And that's important because it shows athleticism. And he's got the ceiling for great athleticism. And that's something that you have to take.
That's good to know. I hadn't dove into his film, and I see him, and I just wasn't sure. Like, so the fact that you're saying he's as good as he is with the potential is good, because I don't think his body's anything close to what it will be or can be.
No.
I want to see him 2 years into Auburn's weight program.
Yeah, and he may still be hovering around that 300-pound range. I mean, he may not go much above that or below it, but he does have some reshaping and refining to do in the weight room and adding some strength, and that's going to take his game to another level, I think.
And I may be completely off on here, but I think Drew 2 years in a weight program in Auburn's weight program, and he is a 2 to 3 year starter at Auburn.
Sure.
On the interior, somewhere on the interior, if not center, then one of the two guard spots. I like him. I like his mindset. I like his mentality. He's a hard worker. He's a good kid. He's a coach's son. He's going to work his tail off. He's going to do everything you ask him to do. And those are and he's got a mean streak.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, that's good.
So I'm excited about that. I thought it was a big get for Auburn.
Mm-hmm. And then all right, so then you got Eston Harris, right? So that's kind of the one probably that people are thinking, I guess, him or Darius Clemens. Is that where most of the attention now goes to? When do those guys pull the trigger, or is there somebody else on the horizon?
Well, I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but I know you and I did off the record, if not on the record. But who was Auburn's most important recruit back then? And I was like, man, it's got to be an offensive lineman. I know Darius Clemens, but damn, dude, when you see these receivers, what hey, is offensive line as a whole, yes. As a group, yes. But what does Auburn need for next year? They need a stud wideout that can catch the freaking ball, create separation, win 50-50s, and catch the ball. And Darius Clemens can do that. So you've got Bobo. Now you've got some momentum with E.J. Harris. I'm scrapping that for now. You got to put Darius Clemens up at the top. I mean, you got to have Antonio Williams, Darius Clemens. You've got to have, and hell, I'm not so sure Auburn doesn't go look at JUCO, doesn't go look at the transfer portal for a receiver, an immediate impact receiver. And I will say this, they tried this past off season. They did. They tried like hell with the South Alabama guy, who is, I don't know how he's doing this year, but he was all American last year at South. And I'm so disappointed in Demetrius Robertson from Saturday. He had a prime opportunities to stick it up Georgia's butt and just completely drop the ball. So
man, that's not funny.
So got to have immediate impact wide receivers, and with Bobo committed, Eston on the way, Tay Woody, although we consider him a D lineman, probably on the way as well. I'm putting Darius Clemens at the top of my list, or Antonio Williams, one of the two.
Yeah, and you talk about receiver. I mean, Shedrick's a senior. Demetrius is a senior, so they're gone. And then you're thinking about, well, Canyon's barely played. He's a sophomore. So, what are the chances he goes in the transfer portal? I mean,
Yeah.
I would think decent. I don't know all the things going on behind the scenes, but you're a sophomore and you've barely played. So Capers kind of same thing, played a little bit more, but still a sophomore. Like, there's the potential guys could leave. I mean, you could lose 3 or 4 guys, period. So probably won't even have to think hard about going to get some playmakers.
Right. And some experienced guys too, not just a bunch of high school kids coming in trying to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
But what I thought I was encouraged about Saturday as well, kind of transitioning, was Jay Fair was there. The 4-star wideout from Texas made the trip on his own dime. Micah Riley Ducker made the trip on his own dime. Amari Kelly came down from Hewitt-Trussell. Kobe Albert is a guy who is a stud with the ball in his hands in high school. I know he's projected defensive back, but damn, he's good. He's good.
Jeffrey, did any commits? I mean, I think they were all there, weren't they?
Every one of them were there.
Yeah.
We had heard some rumblings about, the Cornelius getting fired, Kobe and Amari Kelly both, and they were. They were confused. They were intrigued on what was going on here. So it was good to see both of those guys at the game Saturday. So having those guys, I don't know. Hell, I think I like Kobe Albert at receiver better than I like Omari Kelly, and that's saying something. I love Jay Fair. I think he's the dude. Like, he's the dude of that group right now. He's a playmaker.
Jay Fair is.
Yeah, he'll play as a freshman. Or at some point, I mean, he'll play before the other guys in this class. He's the best wide receiver so far. If they don't get Darius Clemens or Antonio Williams, Jay Fair's the guy, I think, coming out of high school at least, that's going to make the most impact at Auburn next year.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, he's pretty polished already too. He does things pretty well. They don't use him as much in the sense of that they're going to run all these double routes and quick routes and moves and things like that with him. Where he's playing right now, they really just take him vertical, and he's always taking the top off of defense.
Yes, big vertical threat, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so.
And I love Micah Riley Ducker too, man. I love Micah.
Oh yeah, I like him too. And that was my first time seeing Jay in person. He's a little bit taller than I expected.
Legit 6 foot.
Is he? That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I expect him to be shorter than the other commits, but he was right there with him, and we got a picture with him. He's the same height as everybody else, so that was good. I mean, that just gives more to him, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, did you talk about this kid that committed to Tennessee? Sorry, Marcus.
Marquarius. Just call him Squirrel.
Yeah. Why didn't you just tell me that? Squirrel. So he's a receiver, but they've got receiver commits. You're going after Clemens. So is this a guy that is he like just keep him on the warmer, keep him on the burner, or what?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I thought, right? I thought that maybe he was a guy that is somebody they're keeping warm. He's an in-state guy from Clay Chalkville High School in Pinson, Alabama, who has a quarterback that's committed to Louisville. They're having a good season too. I think he's had a great season last year, having another great season this year. He's a great talent. He's one of the guys that is your route runner type. He's not really gonna, he's not the guy that's going to be real physical like maybe a Seth Williams or something. He's more of a Tavares Dawson, where he's a great route runner and things like that. And I'm going off of Tavares Dawson's, high school film, of course, because
I think he's on the team. I don't know at this point.
I think so. Yeah.
Rumor has it.
Yeah.
Seen him warming up a couple times, but
what about 2023 guys? Were there some monsters there? Any
monsters?
Yeah, all over the place.
I forgot to mention Jaquavius Russell of the defensive linemen, the 2023 guys that were there. Russell from Central, right?
No, he's from Carver, Montgomery, I think.
Carver, okay. Yeah, he was with James Smith.
Yes.
Yeah. Jaquavius Russell, James Smith, 2 stud defensive line, 2023 guys. And then you had Peter Woods, stud 2023 D lineman. Hunter Osborne, stud 2023 D lineman. Tamarian Parker, stud 2023 D lineman. He's the Central Phoenix guy.
Yes.
and then Keldrick Fraught from Highland Homestead, 2023 D lineman. And then there was some offensive linemen from the 2023 class that Cole and I both spoke to, Ian Jeffrard and Zechariah Owens. I think both have Auburn offers.
They do.
If I'm not mistaken, both of those guys were there, really liked Auburn, really had good things to say. And then Tyree Adams.
Yes.
That name ring a bell? So that there was, oh man, the big dudes from the 2023 class were just everywhere. It was impressive to see that 2023 class, the trenches, and who all was there.
What's the deal with Peter? So Peter Woods, Hunter Osborne. Obviously I'm like from the periphery, but I've seen those two guys' names. I mean, especially Peter Woods. Those are potential 5 stars. Or is Peter Woods a 5-star?
He is.
Where does Auburn stand with those guys? Because I've seen their names and I'm thinking, at this stage, I'm like, okay, if Auburn's trying to go against Bama or Clemson or whoever,
they will. I think Alabama's going to be tough for Peter Woods, but I did get to talk to him after the game. And I was expecting a James Smith type interview. Cole talked to James Smith after the game, and he was just he didn't have much to say, right? I mean, he said what you expected him to say. He just didn't. But Peter Woods was fantastic, and was very enthusiastic in all the things that he said. He watched the defensive line. He loves Nick Eason. He loves his background, his history, his playing in the NFL, his coaching in the NFL. Loved what he saw from the defensive line. Talked about shutting them out, running the football for the first 2.5 quarters. And just needed some extra guys in there, and they didn't have them. So, although I think he's from Thompson, which I would tell you something, right?
Yeah, he is.
I mean, I don't know the last guy Alabama wanted from Thompson that went anywhere but Alabama.
Yeah.
So that's going to be tough. But you've got these kids from Montgomery, you've got the James Smith, you've got the Russell, you've got these kids from South Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, Highland Home, Central Phoenix City. So there are some dudes, and like I said, I think. Now that I mentioned 5 earlier, but I threw in Russell. Now we've got 6. Auburn gets 3 of those guys. Seems realistic. Seems doable. That's a hell of a
I'll say too
class.
On James Smith, he's a 5-star in the 2023 class. Was in Montgomery, at Carver High School in Montgomery. Now he's at IMG Academy in the sports academy in Bradenton, Florida. He was one of the guys that knew Marcus Harris really well from Madhouse Fitness. There's definitely an in there for Auburn, and he did tell me after the interview, he told me that he'd make it back this year. So, that's one that I think Auburn's going to have a better chance than they're perceived to have, I think, going forward, and they're going to keep working on him. So, I'd watch that one.
Hey, what about defensive tackle recruiting for next year specifically? Because that's something Bryan Harsin talked about in his press conference. Actually, he said he needs the defensive line to continue to get better and develop, and he's like, we need to build more depth there. Kind of saying, hey, well, I need more. In talking about Marquise Robinson or Caleb Johnson, or he's like, I need those guys to keep getting better because I need more competition at that position. They lose Tony Fair, they're going to lose Marquise Burks at the tackle position. Who do they have? I haven't done a deep dive into the roster, but I have to think they're going to want to bring guys in if he's talking about trying to build depth. Is there anybody high school wise that they're going after that we think they can get that could compete next year? Lee Hunter's sitting back there waiting for his chance, I guess. But
I think that's about as close to Auburn has. And Zykevis Walker, have we seen much of him at the 3?
Yeah.
And see, is Dre Butler still around?
Yeah, Dre Butler played a little bit.
He is.
Dre Butler, and then of course Jay Hardy. You remember him? He came in 2 years ago, I think, or last year, and then he got out and went to Tennessee. Is he still here?
No, he's gone.
Yeah.
Did
he go to Tennessee?
I don't know where he went. Not sure at all.
Well, I think we just
he was committed to Tennessee or signed with something and got out and came to Auburn or something.
Just assume he went to UCF. Let's just say he went to UCF.
That's a good bet. Yeah.
Just say he went to Central Florida.
If you're talking about guys that could come in and play next year for 2022 guys, Curtis Perry's a guy we talked to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
He's that good. About him. Curtis Perry's that good.
Yeah, he's a 4-star guy. He's a top, on 300 guy too, 4-star. He's not as big as I thought he was.
Me neither.
Thinking he was more in the 275, 285 range, but I think he's closer to maybe 250, 260 range. So And he's been playing a lot of edge at his new school at Pike Road High School, where he came from Park Crossing in Montgomery, which was close by. But he's playing more edge than he's playing inside now, and maybe that's what they're doing. Recruiting him. They're maybe recruiting him to play the end spot where Colby Wooden is. Derek Hall, maybe that stand-up outside linebacker type, because he's got the motor, he's got the athleticism. I mean, he's one of the top guys in the class for sure. And he had good things to say about Auburn.
He did. And I forgot to mention, speaking of edge or linebacker type guys, Troy Ford,
yes.
2023 guy, Troy Ford, who Cole is very high on him, right?
Yes. I think he's a good player. I think he's he's already built pretty well, to be a junior in high school. He's close to 230. He's right around 6 foot. He's kind of got that. He's honestly got that Wesley Steiner build to him, real stocky. He's been playing with a club on his right hand or left hand, one of his hands. He's had a huge club, and I've enjoyed the way that he uses it as a weapon. That's been really good. So that's why I like him, in case you're wondering. And he's been playing on the edge, and he's really wearing people out with that club, and it was awesome. He didn't have the club on the sideline this weekend. I think he's healed there. So I asked him about that. I was like, so what are you going to do now? He goes, well, honestly, I just ball at my fist. I was like, okay, well, that's perfect. I like that.
Cool dude, man. Really like him. Really like him. I tell you what, man, with the list that we've seen and we saw Saturday, it's going to be hard for the Iron Bowl to top that as far as quality goes. But, man, if they could get most of these guys back for that Iron Bowl and play another decent game, especially with these 2023 guys, we could see this class really start building some momentum early in the cycle. And really like where they are with all the commitments. You had 4 guys coming in this weekend for the Georgia game. Holden Garner, the quarterback, was on an official visit. Damari Austin was on an official visit, the running back. Caleb Wooden, the defensive back, was on an official visit. And Austin, who's not committed, Austin Osbury. And of course, Trey was there. Trey said he spent 90% of the time with basketball. So like I said, I don't really count him, but really like where the staff's got to at this point. And I really like where they're going. It's going to be fun the next couple of months, probably the next week or two too. You got, like we said earlier, you got Tay Woody on the verge, potentially flipping, Robert Woodyard potentially flipping. You got EJ Harris announcing October 28th. You got some big visits coming in the end of October for the Ole Miss game. Oh no, that's basketball. Chance Westry. Speaking of which, real quick on the basketball, Jarris Walker, big time stud, 4-star guy, 5-star guy on some sites, took his official visit to Auburn. Trey Donaldson was there with him all weekend. Bruce was attached to him at the hip. I mean, this is Bruce's top guy. He wants this kid. He will visit Houston, who some think may be the team to beat, along with Auburn. I mean, it's a Houston-Auburn battle, maybe the G League if they get involved anymore. But Jarris Walker, over the next couple of weeks, he will have, basketball is a month earlier. Their signing period is. So you're talking about 1 month from yesterday, all these kids are going to be signing. So Jarris Walker is going to be the guy we're going to be tracking for the next 4 weeks. Chance Westry is coming in for that Ole Miss game for an official visit. Kamari Lands also is planning that, but I think he's more of a Jarris Walker backup plan. And I was told today that he may not visit, which in my mind would be very good news for Jarris Walker. So a lot going on, man. A lot going on after the Georgia weekend basketball, football, and it's only going to get better as the weeks pass.
Yeah, Jarris Walker, man. All eyes on Jarris Walker, especially a week after he goes to Alabama, and he's got that IMG teammate that Alabama just landed, that 5-star point guard, right? Man, Nate Oates has got it going on. And you got to think not just Pearl for Jarris Walker's a good player, but Alabama's making a run at him, and Pearl needs to win that one because of that to me too. I mean, Alabama's right in the mix with some of these guys. He needs to win that battle. All right, let's end on this. Biggest takeaway from the weekend, anything, player, big picture, thing that was said, anything that you thought just translating to, let's keep it to this recruiting class, something that could impact this recruiting class. Just what was maybe biggest takeaway? And Jeffrey, I think you got one. Let's start with you, but just what should fans say? Okay, all right, I'm coming out with this.
Okay. For me, it's such a breath of fresh air to see that. I'm talking big picture here. We know what the top positions of needs are. We know who the top guys are. And we saw just an influx of recruits and visitors at, offensive line, defensive line. It was the guys that mattered most, and they were getting them here for that game. And not only getting him here for that game, but making a decent game out of it where the crowd stayed in it for the majority of it, even though it was 35-10 and was really never that close, although it could have been. But I just thought the names and getting the positions, Malzahn and those guys, they would get big guys here, but they're wide receivers and defensive backs and, tight ends. And, man, they got the big dogs here. They got the 2022 guys here. They got the 2023 guys here, and really used that weekend and all that, the attendance to build some momentum, not only for the 22 class, but for the future of the 23 and even some of the 24 guys that were here.
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah, I'd say, I'm like you were saying earlier, I'm new at this and I haven't been on the sideline very long. I've been there for a few games now. But one of the things that I noticed was when the student section got loud, and I'm talking before the game here, and of course, they're rocking 2 hours before the game. They got the music going. They got the big board putting all the cool stuff out there. Some of the bigger guys and the guys that were not, they were kind of locked in where they were standing on the sideline and they were watching warm-ups and things. When the student section got loud and when they started bumping some music, those guys were locked on it, and they looked like they were really enjoying it. They looked like they were impressed. They looked like they hadn't seen an environment like that in a while, and they probably haven't because they haven't, with the crowds last year and everything. So
yeah,
I think that was huge for them. And I'll say this too. The way that the current Auburn commits acted on the sideline was interesting to me. They are close and they are recruiting. I mean, they look like they're part of the staff out there. They walk around together. Everybody knows who they are. They're real tight. And they're not afraid to recruit somebody. They're not afraid to tell them that Auburn's a great place to go play. They're not afraid to, jump out there and take that role. So, and they're doing it as a group. And I think guys respond to that pretty well and see that, and they go, yeah, that's something I could be a part of. And a lot of guys told us that in the interview, and they said the same thing about the crowd. So, and I could tell. I mean, they were locked in. They saw it, and their eyes were like, big, and they were seeing things like that and going, man, this is really great. So that's my takeaway. I thought it went really well.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed. Jeffrey may or may not agree, but I've noticed that just going back to when I used to cover recruiting, the early commits, they form that bond. Those first 5, 6, 7 guys, anybody before, like the summer, let's just say, like those guys that commit early, they tend to be a group. I don't know if it's just because they then have longer together and they get into the fall and can recruit together. But those early guys just end up becoming your best recruiters, and they become pretty tight.
Yeah. And what's funny is that one guy last year who was not that way. Looking back, it was the writing on the wall. Armani Goodwin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you see a lot on the sideline. You can see how they interact, and you see things like that. If you pay attention, you can see things like that, like Jeffrey's saying, the writing on the wall. I mean, it's very evident that the guys that are committed to Auburn right now are all in. There's some things going on. Some of them were confused with, the happenings that went on, but they seem to really trust Harsin. They like the new staff, and they're just blown away by the atmosphere every time. So.
Well, big weekend. If you want the rest of everything that went on, go to auburnlive.com. Full coverage there. There's a bunch of more stuff that we didn't hit on. There's more stuff to come out this week on both basketball and football wise. So make sure and check out auburnlive.com. Subscribe, $10 for the next year. If you don't want to do that, it's like $1. What is it? 4 months. You get $1 for the next 4 months or something like that. But why would you do that? Just come on, $10. Just give up Wendy's for one day. And
empty your ashtray.
Yeah, one day, and you've got auburnlive.com for a year. All right. Appreciate it, fellas. All the football, basketball, recruiting information you can want, auburnlive.com. We'll be back, I guess, tomorrow with another podcast, and the guys will keep churning out information. Appreciate everybody joining us. See ya.